Well, 12 more bodies have been recovered from the site of a deadly blast at the West Fertilizer Company plant in the town of West, Texas. A massive explosion that's left much of the small city in ruin. Officials say that 60 people still remain unaccounted for, while 200 others have been left injured. The blast flattened a 5-block area. Its shockwave so strong that the U.S. Geological Survey measured it to be on par with a 2.1 magnitude earthquake. According to the company, there were 54,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. To put that into context, the explosion that rocked Oklahoma City in 1995 used 4,000 pounds of the same chemical. If you haven't seen the video yet, you need to, because it's absolutely terrifying. Check it out.
What about a Bush's bird? They go all around the I'm sure the
So how could something like this occur at a facility that once reported to the EPA in writing that there was no risk of fire or explosion? Well, to help me break down what we do know about the West Texas explosion and the impact of neglected workplace safety standards, I'm joined now by Dr. Jacob Remes, Public Affairs and History Professor at SUNY Empire State College. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, Jacob, in 2006, West Fertilizer Company had been fined by the EPA for not having a risk management plan. How could a company producing such dangerous compounds not have an emergency management plan? And is the extent of the penalty really just a slap on the wrist?
Well, there are a couple of questions embedded in that. One is it was supposed to have a risk management plan. It clearly didn't. And we don't actually know, or at least I don't actually know, whether it developed a plan afterwards. The EPA, I think, has said that what it was accused of doing several years ago was mitigated, but we don't know what that risk management plan was. We don't know really anything about it, or if it was good enough. The other question, really, though, is are companies doing enough, and does the government have enough power to create safe living conditions and working conditions? And the answer, apparently, is not really.
You know, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, had not inspected the plant in 5 years. I mean, why do you think it was neglected for so long? Is it commonplace for there to be so little oversight and such long time spans between inspections?
Yeah, so combining the state OSHA and state OSHAs and the federal OSHA, there are only 2,220 inspectors for workplace safety in the entire country. That means that each workplace could be inspected by federal inspectors, or no, by everyone, an average of once every 129 years. In Texas, it would actually work out to once every 67 years, which is a lot better than once every 129, but it's still not very good. OSHA is drastically underfunded. OSHA is an agency, it only started in the 1970s, that has never gotten very much attention, never gotten very much love from Congress or from administrations. One of its sibling, its 1970 sibling, the EPA, has a considerably greater budget, somewhat more inspectors, and actually one of the comparisons that's often made has much greater fining and criminal ability. It's actually a bigger deal if you kill certain endangered species or if you do certain environmental violations than if you kill a worker.
It's amazing what you just outlined. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, I mean, we're talking about on average 4,600 Americans dying every year in workplace accidents. Why, with so many deaths, isn't there more of a priority to fully fund OSHA?
I think that's an excellent question. That has to do with our own priorities. 46. That's an average of almost 13 a day. 13 a week. And that's not even including the average of 50,000 occupational deaths a year. That's things like diseases, silicosis, black lung, popcorn lung, things like that. I think a lot of these deaths don't happen all at once. They happen in dribs and drabs. They happen from people falling off of tall ledges. They happen on construction sites. They happen when things collapse. One person dies, 2 people die, and these are tragedies, and they add up, as you say, to 4,600 a year, or to 50,000 a year if you include occupational diseases. But individually, they look like accidents. Individually, maybe they look like carelessness on a level of an individual worker or an individual manager or an individual plant. But when we look at it all at once, when we look at these 4,600 a year or these 50,000 a year, we can see, no, it's more than that. We can see it's a societal choice that we make not to care enough about these questions.
Yeah, it seems like we're seeing these types of corners getting cut time and time again, you know, whether it's with the pipelines, the nuclear reactors. I mean, when does this kind of disregard purposefully become criminally negligent?
Well, there are legal standards about that. And it is possible to get a criminal prosecution when a worker dies, although it's very difficult. There have actually only been, from 1970 to 2011, there were about 360,000 workplace deaths, and only 84, I think that's right, 84 prosecutions. So it's really hard. Legally, it's really hard. I think the way we change that is by organizing, right? There's never going to be enough inspectors if there's going to be an inspector at every factory making sure at every moment that it's going to be safe. The only way this will happen is if communities are organized enough to say, we don't want that fertilizer plant or that chemical plant in our neighborhood. It's too dangerous. Or if workers are organized and are therefore empowered to say, I only came to work here, I didn't come to die. No, I'm not going to do that unsafe thing.
And let's talk about organizing within the workplace. I mean, Texas has the highest incidence of workplace-related deaths. It's also one of the most anti-union states. I mean, is there a correlation here?
Absolutely. There's absolutely a correlation that union workplaces are safer workplaces.
And, you know, let's talk about deregulation, of course, specifically in Texas, once again, I mean, one of the most deregulated states. What does Rick Perry saying that it's good, it's fair and predictable to have a regulatory climate? I mean, I'm just paraphrasing him here. What does that mean? And when it comes to workplace safety, is deregulation or allowing the industries to regulate themselves a good policy?
Well, no, in general, I would say it's absolutely not a good policy. We definitely need government to make sure that we have workplace safety standards. The passing of the original Occupational Safety and Health Act in 1972 was an important move, as was around the same time the passing of EPA. And it's important to see how this explosion in West Texas is both an environmental and a workplace disaster. In fact, the people who were most affected were not people who were working there. It was people who lived nearby it. That's almost the definition of an environmental disaster. And it's really not good enough to say, oh, we're just going to trust the employers, we're just going to trust the polluters, if we don't make it expensive for them to pollute or have dangerous workplaces.
Right, because
you have to build that cost into their cost of doing business.
Yeah, because at this point, it's just a very small slap on the wrist for them to basically have a license to pollute and to kill. I mean, essentially, that's what we're looking at when we're looking at these industries. Thank you so much for coming down, breaking it down. Jacob Remus, Public Affairs and History Professor at SUNY Empire State College. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.